if you want to learn how to ride a bike, you got to keep forward momentum, right? You could cross
Love
over
that.
that line 100 times. As long as you keep moving forward, you're going to
True.
be able to get somewhere. And by the time you get there, you're a little bit better than when you started. Are you an expert? Are you going to join the Tour de France? No, you're not, right? You're still wildly incompetent as compared to the world's best. But you're not
Sure.
looking to be the world's best. You're looking to be your best version of yourself.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today, our guest is Chris Gutkes, president of Island Elevator. In this interview, Chris shares his path of developing as a business owner in the elevator industry. Having been on this journey for a while, Chris has learned many lessons along the way, some of them the hard way. Though it's not always easy to develop self-awareness and empathy, these are two of the critical skills for growing as a leader. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Matt, for having me. It's been a while. I think it's been like a year and a half, but I'm glad to be back.
It's been almost 2. Yeah. So you were one of my first interviews back in 2022. So
and you were the first podcast I was ever on. Lots of ums and ahs back then. When I watched that, I'm like, ugh.
And now you're a pro. This is a piece of cake, right?
Well, I learned a lot from it. Like when we did like a pre-interview and there was like some questions and I was thinking about it. So then when we did the actual interview, what I found was all of those ums and ahs and those placeholders was me trying to remember the answer that I had for the question that I wrote like 4 days ago. So I learned from that. No more pre-interviews, no more questions. Let's just let it fly. That's where I'm at my best.
Awesome. No, I love it. It's more natural and just go with it. And I'm the same way. So I wanted to bounce back because obviously you've been at this a while. You know the industry, you know a lot. And so many of the people I talk to, a lot of, even some of my clients are either business, obviously they're business owners if they're clients, but a lot of the people I talk to who are not yet business owners aspire to business ownership as part of their career path, which obviously you've done. And so I want to dig into that a little bit today and, talk to an entrepreneur, yourself, of course, and just talk about what does it take to run a business in the elevator industry and what's that like a little bit. So
there's like a couple of questions in there. So number one, I never really considered myself an entrepreneur. I always think of myself as an operator, right? So entrepreneurs got like these pie in the sky ideas and all of these problems that they're going to solve. And they're all a little bit space cadet-y a little bit. So, but I'm the operator. I'm the one where the entrepreneur turns to and he's like, here you go make this happen, because I got to go fly off somewhere and deal with something else. So I get like enrichment out of that. As far as my path to entrepreneurship, I fell into entrepreneurship like somebody falls into a ditch, and it hurt when I hit the bottom. Yeah, it was just, I was out and I was putting my hands on the equipment one day. My old man passed away. Now I'm sitting in the big chair trying to figure out what I'm doing because I literally have no idea what I'm doing. Right. So that entire experience made me a better operator. But it was only when I started to practice, number one, self-awareness, and number two, empathy. So what I preach to everybody is that you have to start to take the few moments a day to kind of look yourself in the mirror and say, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Do more of what works, do less of what doesn't work. And how do people react to me when I enter in a room? How do people respond to me when I open my mouth? And is that something that's going to be conducive for me to be able to achieve the kind of goals that I'm trying to shoot for here through
let's pause for just a second. Yeah. So you're digging into self-awareness, and yet when you say look in the mirror, say what am I good at, what am I not? There's just so much there, because myself and I think a lot of us, I'm sometimes just blind to what I'm not good at. And so what I heard you say was listen to how people react, because I think that's especially that feedback that's like super painful to me. That's the most beneficial, but man, it hurts to hear.
Yeah.
So how do you really dig into self-awareness, if you're going to lead a team and lead a business, what's been most helpful to really see what you don't even want to see?
Well, you got to start with like a point in the sky, like a something that you're actually aiming towards. So, and when it comes to criticism doesn't really bother me. Like, it doesn't hurt my feelings. It just energizes me and helps me to focus more on what it is that I want to be able to accomplish.
Without
So,
choking the person to death in the first place? Is that
or my father was not Mr. Cuddly, Hugly, come over here, son. Let me sit down and explain the world to you. He
right?
was like, don't be sorry, don't be sorry, be better. Right. That's
Okay.
the world
Okay.
is not around here to feel bad for you. And if you're going to spend time feeling bad for yourself, you're going to be the only one.
Right.
So that's something that I learned from my father, an open, honest conversation, being able to speak to each other's faults, criticisms, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really hurt my feelings, because what it does is that I've framed my mindset around it. Some people are just, or a lot of people have a tough time not internalizing it, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to start with who you are and what you
Well, it's
know.
it's
Because
the default, right? My default is to lash out and say, "Oh, you don't know who I am." Well, that's the false construct I've got in my head about who I think I am. But
mm,
but you're
no, but
seeing
on
me
the
more
same
clearly.
note, no, let's be honest, Matt. I mean, aside from your wife, nobody really knows who you are, right? So, for everybody to make false presumptions around you, that's that's basically the status quo. So if you accept the fact, it's almost like when I'm driving, I don't get road rage because I assume that there are people on the road who are trying to run me into in off the highway. So it doesn't bother me. I'm now, I understand the situation that I'm living in, and then I just kind of, I get from my point A to my point B. But if we wanted to talk about like self-awareness and empathy, you got to start with that goal that's off in the horizon. Like, what exactly do you want to be? And then once you can figure out what it is that you want to be, then you can ask yourself that, being that, whatever that is, maybe it's the president of the company, maybe it's a supervisor inside of your company. What does that look like? How do I define that? And then once you're able to define that point on the horizon, you can now use self awareness to say, okay, do I have the skills and traits? Do I have do I have what it takes in order to be able to get from here to there? So, but I can't be floating around in the ether pretending like I'm Einstein when I'm not, or
Right.
when I need to have certain certain skill sets that I don't have, right? So it's not an opportunity to try to like give yourself a bunch of false toxic positivity and positive affirmations. This is like real deep down dirty stuff, not the stuff that's on your social media account.
Yeah.
So you want to really think about it, and then now, if you know where you are and you know where you want to be, all you got to do is just go ahead and get it. So
How do you so I'm just curious what you have found to be most helpful in navigating that journey, because it from the work I've done, it's not an easy journey
no.
to to really change some of those things that it's a habit, right? And
Hmm.
maybe you'll look at a meeting that you were in and wow, that was certainly not a CEO thing to say, and now people are upset with me, and I'm not making the progress that I'm hoping for. What
Right.
do you find most useful, most helpful?
So you definitely have to be a little bit of a realist. Is it hard work? Yes. If it was easy, then everybody would be doing it.
Sure.
So if you're planning on doing something that's challenging, you have to accept the fact that you are going to fail. You're going to fail yourself, and you're going to fail your own mission. Now, does failure mean stop? It doesn't mean stop. It just means, we got to move around this a little bit. We took a little step back. We're going to take a step forward, which that happens to me all the time. So the next thing that you probably need to exercise yourself on this journey is a little self-forgiveness, right?
Right.
Just understand that, Chris, you are trying to get there. You're better today than you were yesterday. You're not as good as you're going to be tomorrow, not where you need to be if you want to be respected as a CEO or whatever the hell it is that you're shooting for.
Right.
So practice self-forgiveness.
Right. Right. And I've, yeah, for myself, it's self-compassion. But I kind of look at myself like a 5-year-old on a bike or a 4-year-old or however. It's like, well, how many times do you cross the line? Well, as long as you keep crossing that line, you can learn to balance. But I'm not going to be perfectly on that line. I'm going to sway this way and that way and this way and that way. And
More
learning a new
importantly,
skill.
is that if you want to learn how to ride a bike, you got to keep forward momentum, right? You could cross
Love
over
that.
that line 100 times. As long as you keep moving forward, you're going to
True.
be able to get somewhere. And by the time you get there, you're a little bit better than when you started. Are you an expert? Are you going to join the Tour de France? No, you're not, right? You're still wildly incompetent as compared to the world's best. But you're
Sure.
not looking to be the world's best. You're looking to be your best version of yourself.
Yeah. So we talked about some self-awareness. What about the empathy piece? How do
Uh,
you how do you find that within yourself?
You want to talk about tough? Self-awareness is tough. Empathy is just as tough, if not tougher,
Sure.
because when you're somebody like me, I grew up, I was the firstborn child in my family, not just my mother's family. It was like on both sides, my mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family. I was the first nephew, grandson, all this stuff. So as I'm growing up, everything that comes out of my mouth, people are like, oh my God, this is the most brilliant, this kid is so cute, and blah, 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 blah. And it ingrains in your head that everything
Sure.
that I'm doing is special. And
World
not only
revolves
that,
around me.
the
Right.
whole world, I can't believe it. I finally made it. You know what I mean? The whole world revolves around me. So it is a rough transition when you start to realize that all of that goodness that kind of informed this sense of self-confidence that you have is it's not exactly how the world works, because everybody else thinks that the world revolves around them also. So
Sure.
so when we're talking about empathy, it's not about sympathizing with somebody. It's really about putting yourself in their shoes. Like, what does it feel if I was sitting there performing that task and then somebody comes over and interrupts me? It probably feels like a little frustrating. So by practicing empathy, what I do is I try to find a way to engage or have people engage with each other so that they are not upsetting the balance that gives them confidence, that makes them feel good about what they do, and allows them to consider reciprocal generosity, right? So if
So
I
give me
am,
a little like a specific example. It sounds like you're saying, okay, if you two are rubbing each other raw and you want to punch each other in the face, go spend some time together. Is what I heard.
yes, and spending
Tell
time
me.
together could be that time that you spend punching each other in the face, though.
Sure.
You really have to be able to spend time getting to know the other person. What is their story? What stresses them out? What are they worried about when they're not worried
Right.
about stuff at work? So and then once you're able to tap into that, you're able to say, okay, this person doesn't like to be talked to like this. They like to be talked to like this, in these terms, more logistical terms. So by
What are
meeting them where they are, you have to
yeah.
understand where they are first, and then you can meet them where they are, and then you can have some sort of effective communication and relationship building.
What are some of the tools you use to help people get to that level? Because my experience is it's super challenging. And maybe in a workplace where you're the boss and you're like, hey, you two, sit in time out and you're gonna write a little story or whatever, and then you're gonna read each other's stories, or I'm just curious how that plays out in your business.
Well, you got two parts. Number one is, how do I practice empathy for myself? What I had to find out after a while is that people were being nice to me and placating me and saying yes to me, giving me counterfeit yeses because of the seat that I sit in.
Sure.
And that didn't help anybody. So what I need to do when I'm practicing empathy is to try to break down those barriers so that we can create a high level of relatability so that we can actually have an honest conversation. Because let's be honest, when you run an organization, it doesn't matter if it's 2 people, 4 people, 10 people, or more. The people that are closest to the customer are the people that actually know what's going on in the company.
True.
Everybody else is just lying to themselves, right? And looking at the numbers. So that's an example of empathy in my experience, and an example of empathy or trying to train through empathy in um, through the company at Island Elevator. We do a couple of different empathy building exercises. So for one, we do an operations meeting 3 times a week. On the Monday operations meetings, we talk about what we did over the weekend. So by understanding what somebody is doing when they're not at work, you're actually building a little bit more of a relationship with them. Uh, Usually either Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays, we'll also do stress level tests. So we'll go around the room and I'll say, okay, what is your stress level between 1 and 5, 5 being the highest? And people will tell us. So if anybody gives us a number that's 3 or higher, the follow-up question is why? Why are you stressed out? Most of the time is, I'm spending a lot of time on this and I really need to spend time on that. Okay. Everybody understands what Bill over here is struggling with. Can somebody volunteer to take this responsibility for a couple of hours so that he can catch up over here? And now all of a sudden, it doesn't create empathy, but it also creates team building. And then the third exercise, we just did this recently, where we basically took everybody. We had a big problem in the office where everybody, we called them drive-bys. So anybody that kind of comes through, right, has something in their head, stops at the office, interrupts what you're doing, and it gives you a task. And we're like, and it pulls people completely out of what they're doing and makes everybody really kind of like a little bit scattered, super inefficient. And for the most part, you're a little unhappy too. So we had a whole exercise where we were like, okay, this is how we define a drive-by. This is what it looks like when you perform a drive-by. And then and we're going around the room. I'm not writing the stuff on the board. I'm getting input from everybody in the room. They put it up on the board so that they have ownership of it. And then the last column is, how do you feel when somebody does a drive-by on you? Frustrated, mad, angry, upset, this, that, and the third. So people didn't even know that they were creating that
Right.
that energy just by zipping through and then, dropping a bomb on them. And this was going all the way through the organization, from admins all the way up to president of the company. I was doing drive-bys too. And people we were able to create an environment where people were able to really share how frustrated they were going to get when that happens.
So what I'm curious to know is what did you implement so that I can get this urgent point? Maybe I'm driving by. Why? Because I'm on my way to do X, Y, and Z. How do you get that and get the attention that it needs without kind of throwing everybody off?
So what we had to do is we had to start with, how do you define urgent, right? So we're saying, okay, what is an acceptable drive-by? Somebody calls in with a service call. Somebody calls in, they're stuck inside the elevator. Somebody calls in, it's a brand new customer lead. Boom. It turned out that there were only 4 things. So we were like, all right, anything that is not these 4 things, you are not allowed to do it. Then we gave everybody a different method of communication based with timelines. So if you send a internal DM, direct message through our Gmail email stuff, then that is something that you're looking for a response within 2 hours. And then the person on the other side can finish their task and then go over there and give you the answers that you're looking for. If it doesn't happen there, then send an email. And don't forget that you have meetings. Everybody has a minimum of 3 meetings with their direct super. So can it wait 24 hours? So what we're doing is we're kind of pushing things down. People just get very excited and they want to be able to help out the customer. So by kind of putting things in perspective and reframing it, they understand that the things that they thought was an emergency actually can wait. And the customer will still be happy.
Well, and if it really is an emergency, well, great. Let's rally the troops to solve this emergency, but let's
Absolutely.
not do it when it doesn't matter.
But as a team, right? If Matt worked here, me and Matt have to come to an agreeable definition of what an emergency is, so that I'm not dropping my emergencies on you and you're not dropping your emergencies on me. We understand that at Island Elevator, this is considered emergency and everything else can wait.
Yeah, no, I love that. It reminds me when my oldest son was a I don't know 2. We started talking, and he loved trucks, and they would drive by and mom. She's like, what? Big truck, right? And he would do that over and over. Mom, what? Big truck. A big truck drove by. He loved his truck. So, obviously, he wouldn't have known that process. But I love that you were able to put that process in place.
And I think
like you
that
say,
your story also helps to illustrate that we are all 2-year-olds in our brains, right? Our primitive brain sees things, we get excited about it. We want to be able to kind of like bring that to the attention of other people that we love. So we're trying to quiet down our 2-year-old brain and let our 45-year-old brain do the thinking for us.
Right. So, I mean, to me, it sounds like some of these things you've learned, as far as the empathy, the team building, these are, I don't know, are they advanced skills as far as leadership goes? Because, I mean, I don't know. What about somebody who's, I mean, when you were just starting out as a brand new CEO, and I don't know how long it's been exactly. How long has it been since you started sitting in that chair?
It's been on March 6th, it will have been 8 years.
Okay.
So how did I learn these techniques? I think that it all starts from what it is that you want to be, what it is that you want to accomplish. So I wanted to be better. I wanted to be a really good CEO and leader inside the organization. So what you find is that when you want to be good at something, you wanted to be good at baseball statistics, you consume a lot of baseball statistics. So
Sure.
when I want to be good at leadership and leading and empathy building, I'm consuming books and podcasts and having conversations with people as it pertains to that. And I think that another thing that kind of helped me out big time is the peer groups that I was associated to, the CEO
Sure.
groups. So I've got Vistage, which was from 2019 up until 2023. They were really good, except they were just a little bit too high level for me. So if it was a bigger organization, maybe some of the lessons would have resonated a little bit better. So I kind of stepped it down just a little bit. Now I'm part of another group called Data Key Advisors. And he was nice because he chairs his group. It's a little bit small, a little bit more regional. He chairs the group specifically around strategic thinking and process development. So what I exercise over there, as far as being able to define a problem and a process and a level and a bunch of solutions for people to be able to understand what the problem is and then how to work inside the confines of solving this for other people. I think that a lot of that knowledge was gained just through the exposure of understanding process development and how to be able to bring that to your people in order to improve communication.
Right. Right. No, that's great. And I think it's awesome that you found resources that are helpful and that you're able to digest them at high speed, because it sounds like the analogy I use is, you're changing out the tires at 65 miles an hour, you, because the business is running, right? And it's like, all right, dude, you're now driving. Oh, and by the way, you need to learn and adopt and implement these skills and these processes while you're flying down the freeway. And
Mm-hmm.
that that's got to be a tough spot to be in.
It's always a tough spot to be in, but it makes so much sense that it's almost you're silly if you don't take a pause, right? So most people don't feel comfortable taking a pause because they think that everything is just going to cave in on itself and disappear the next day. Once I was able to get over that fear, so a lot of this is fear-based stuff. And I
Sure.
get over the fear and I understand that if we stop, we reorganize, come up with a better plan and process, and then we relaunch again. And these are micro stops. So maybe it's a stop over the course of 1 day a month, or 1 week a quarter, or 60-day stretch, or something like that, in order to get something done. I can't explain to you how relieved, number one, people get just by starting the conversation about, listen, this is not the best we can do. We can do better. I have a plan for us, right?
Right.
They feel so much better because they don't feel like they have to run through a wall and run around in circles all the time. And then number two, once you get their buy-in, once they're part of the process development and the participation in launching it, right? Especially to be able to describe where certain problems happen in the process, and then editing
Sure.
the process so that they don't have to deal with those problems anymore. And then they take that and then they push that forward. It's like they fell in love with their job a second time. It's so
Awesome.
much. It's if you're even thinking about if you're having problems in your company, don't blame the person, blame the process. Sit down and really analyze what it is that you're not just what it is that you're doing, but how you're doing it, right?
Right.
And the communication levels that are in there. If you can start with that, then you're basically rebuilding your foundation, and it doesn't take a big time commitment.
Right, right. When you said I have a plan, kind of went through my head was, okay, I may not have the answer, but what I have is a plan to at least sit down and let's look at what's going on. Because
That's the
I mean,
beauty.
yeah,
That's the beauty about process development, is that we all understand that the first process is not the final process. So
sure,
I always tell them, listen, we're going to put this together. We're going to try it for a week. We're going to try it for 2 weeks. We're going to come back. We're going to edit it. 2 more weeks, come back and we'll edit it until we sharpen the stone, right? Until we get that knife, that blade perfect.
So do you ever find yourself in a situation where maybe you're over analyzing things and maybe throwing too many new, oh, hey, we're going to do this on top of this on top of this? Have you ever like overwhelmed people with, oh my gosh, Chris, stop. Okay, this, we let's get one
Yes.
down before we pile six more on.
Yes. And most of it is tied and anchored to my ego, right? And it's usually stuck on high level thinking. That's where process development is nice, because it really is about the person that we're developing the process for. It's actually to make your job and your life easier. But I've definitely come at my team with a bunch of just highfalutin bullshit that they were like, what the are you talking about? We haven't even finished the last three things that you asked us to do. Now you want us to do something else. And God knows we can't have you going to any more of these meetings, right? Every time you come back from a meeting, you got another idea. So I totally, I didn't have empathy, right? So again, my empathy muscles are stronger now than they were, but they still weren't that good at the time when they finally, when the team finally just broke down and said, listen, you got to stop the nonsense, right? So I appreciate them for being honest with me. And it's something that you kind of learn over time. What, when is the right time to actually do this?
Well, and kudos to you for having the humility to just say, "Oh, okay, I guess I need to listen to my team instead of being so bullheaded and prideful that I'm just going to keep running over them until they figure it out."
It's really, you got to remind yourself who you work for, right? A lot of these CEO types and these execs and all of their they think that the whole world works for them. That's my people. That's my this. That's they work for me. Ba 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 ba. Wah wah wah. Right? The right answer is that you work for them. Right? I work for the people that decide to dedicate 1/3 of their lives, come here and put in the time and effort and energy into Island Elevator. I work for the customers, right? That's who I work for. We all work for somebody, but if you've deluded yourself into thinking that everybody works for you, or no, you don't work for anybody, then it's going to be nearly impossible for you to exercise the type of humility that it would take to listen to somebody that you believe is a perceived lesser down the hierarchy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say to somebody who wants to take this leap into entrepreneurship? Maybe they want to be a contractor like you, maybe they want to, start a consulting firm. And I'm seeing, like I say, a lot of folks wanting to do that. Some have the courage, some maybe not yet, but where would you start?
Well, this is what I can tell you. Number one, you're going to start at the same place that I told you that we're going to start before. You got to pick a spot on the horizon. You have to define that spot on the horizon. You have to say, I want to be blank, just like blank, but definitely not like blank. So you want to be able to pick where you want to be, who is a close approximation to what it is that you want to be, and who is the exact opposite, the antithesis of what it is that you want to be. So for me, it was, I want to be president of Island Elevator, just like Bobby Schaefer, president of D&D Elevator, but nothing like those donkeys that run that elevator company down the block from me, right? So where I know where I want to be, I know what it looks like when I get there, I know what it looks like if I'm going in the wrong direction. So you have to be able to define that first. Once you're there, then you need to be able to do what I call sharpening the axe, right? Abe Lincoln said that if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. So you've got to be able to practice a little self-awareness, a little empathy, and then start to bring in all of these resources that are going to be necessary for you to be able to make that leap. So if I was talking to any prospective entrepreneurs out there, I would definitely give them a couple of books. One would be Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The E-Myth, especially if you're coming out from a technician standpoint. This is Marketing by Seth Godin, and Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, right? So those 4 books, they're written really simply. They're written to teach. So, and you could take them down in lessons and really, what it'll do is help adjust your mindset and then continue to set you down the path for success. Because too many of these businesses fail, and it's not because the people are idiots, it's because they just don't have the exposure necessary to be able to, or the cash flow to make enough mistakes and learn on the fly,
Sure.
which is basically where I was at. So, does that help?
Oh yeah. No, I think so. Right. I'm not starting my own business right now in the industry, but I think it's great advice. In fact, I'm going to get some of those books myself, some of those that I haven't read. So
You also gotta, so you get through those books and you don't have to read them, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They've got the entire audio book on YouTube. Seth Godin,
sure.
This is Marketing. They got the entire audio book on YouTube. You don't even have to buy it. So you just got to take the time and hit it 30 minutes at a time when you're in the car. But the other things you want to do is you want to be able to stand for something. So you can't just go out there and say, oh, well, I'm going to fix elevators. Well, I don't care about that because lots of people know how to fix elevators. Why are you different? Why are you special? What is going to make you different? What is going to make you special? Because if you can't message what it is that you do, how you do it differently, why it is that you're special, then you're not going to be able to tell prospective customers. You're not going to be able to tell prospective teammates. And then at a certain point, you're going to kind of lose yourself. Like, what am I actually doing this for? What is my grand scheme of things? For me, for the most part, and it takes years to kind of figure it out because they're always like, oh, what's your 7-second pitch? Can you do it in like 10 words or less and all this other shit? So I've learned, I heard that type of stuff back in 2018, 19, and I've still been thinking about it. And I would say that probably the closest approximation of what I do is that I am sick of owners and executives shitting on their customers, shitting on their people, and calling it business. It's not business. Business is about solving problems. So that's what I stand for. So when I say that, people understand it, and then they either create an association to it or they tell me to go kick rocks, which I'm fine with because I don't need everybody. I just need the people that believe what I believe.
So would you say that that's kind of the motto of Island Elevator? I mean, do you have that defined for Island?
It's hard to say about the motto. I think that I'm constantly refining my communication in order to make it tighter, more clear, more emotional, continue to elevate it. As soon as you turn it into a motto and then you start throwing it on documents and on the back of t-shirts, if I change my mind at 6 months, it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. So no, I wouldn't attach it to the company. I really attach it to my why.
Okay. So that is your why then, more than the company per se.
Well, they say that every great organization was built in the shadow of one man or woman. So it has to start with you. If you're thinking about going out on your own in entrepreneurship, you have to be able to define yourself and own your space because nobody is going to want to go with you, and you need people to go with you. You can't do shit unless you have people, right? So if you want people to go with you, they have to understand where you're going and what you believe in. You need to be able to communicate that. So my why is very strongly relevant to what it is that we do here at Island Elevator.
Hear you. Thank you. Appreciate you being on with me today, Chris. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.